The night was quiet in a way that made even small sounds feel heavy. The open land slept under a dark sky, and the wind moved slowly through dry grass. Far from houses and lights, a single horse stood near an old wooden post. A thick chain was wrapped around her neck and tied tightly, leaving her little space to move. Her body looked tired and weak, and her ribs showed clearly under her dull coat. She had been standing there for a long time, longer than anyone should. The horse lifted her head and cried out. The sound was long and painful, filled with fear and loneliness. It echoed across the land and then faded into the night. She lowered her head again, breathing hard. Her legs shook as she tried to shift her weight, but the chain pulled her back. The ground under her hooves was dry and cracked. There was no grass she could reach. Nearby, an old bucket lay on its side, empty and useless. Hours passed slowly. The moon moved across the sky, and the cold grew stronger. The horse cried again, this time weaker. Each sound took more effort than the last. She was not crying in anger. She was calling for help, hoping someone would hear her before it was too late. Her eyes were wide and tired, reflecting the moonlight. She had once been strong and proud, but now she was only trying to survive. Not far away, in a small wooden house, a rancher named Tom sat alone. He was a man who had lived close to the land all his life. His hands were rough from years of work, and his face showed quiet strength. That night, he felt uneasy without knowing why. He had finished his simple meal and sat at the table, staring at nothing in particular. The usual peace of the night felt broken. Tom stood up to turn off the lamp when he paused. He thought he heard something. At first, he brushed it off as the wind or an animal far away. But then the sound came again. It was faint, but it carried pain. Tom frowned and leaned closer to the window. He held his breath and listened carefully. The sound returned, clearer this time. It was a cry, long and strained. Tom's heart tightened. He had heard many animals before, but this sound was different. It was not normal. It was a sound of suffering. He grabbed his jacket without thinking and stepped outside. The cold air hit his face, and the night seemed suddenly alive. Tom stood still, listening. The cry came again, drifting from the far side of the ranch road. He knew that area well. It was quiet and rarely visited. His mind filled with worry. Someone or something was in trouble. He reached for his flashlight and started walking in the direction of the sound. Each step felt important. The ground crunched under his boots, and the wind brushed past him. The cry grew louder as he moved forward. It made his chest feel tight. He called out softly, not knowing why, as if his voice might bring comfort. He promised out loud that he was coming. Meanwhile, the horse lifted her head again. Her body ached, and her mouth was dry. She had not felt hope in a long time. But something had changed. The air felt different. She heard a new sound, footsteps, slow but steady. Her ears twitched, and she tried to turn toward the noise, but the chain pulled tight again. Tom's flashlight beam cut through the darkness. At first, he saw nothing but shadows and dry land. Then the light caught the shape of the wooden post. His steps slowed. As he moved closer, the beam revealed the horse. She stood still, her head low, her body thin and shaking. Tom stopped, shocked by what he saw. His chest filled with anger and sadness at the same time. No animal deserved this. He moved closer, speaking gently so she would not be afraid. The horse raised her head slightly, watching him with tired eyes. She did not try to pull away. She was too weak for that. Tom took a careful step forward and then another. He could see the chain clearly now. It was old and heavy, biting into her skin. He swallowed hard. Someone had left her here, tied up and forgotten. The thought made his hands shake. The horse breathed slowly, watching him. She did not know who he was or what he would do. But the fear inside her began to soften, just a little. For the first time in many nights, she was not alone. Tom stood there in silence for a moment, letting her see that he meant no harm. The night wind moved around them, but the screaming had stopped. The quiet now felt different. It felt like the moment before something important changed. Tom stood a few steps away from the horse and let the light from his flashlight rest on the ground instead of her eyes. He knew animals could be scared by sudden brightness. His voice stayed low and calm as he spoke slowly, using soft words without meaning. The sound of his voice was steady, and it carried kindness. The horse listened. Her ears moved forward, then back, unsure but curious. He took another small step closer. The horse did not pull away. She only breathed deeply and lowered her head again. Tom could see how tired she was. Her legs looked weak, and her skin hung loosely over her bones. The chain around her neck was worse than he thought. It was tight and rubbed the same spot again and again. He felt his throat tighten as he looked at it. Tom knelt down slowly so he would not seem tall or threatening. He rested his hand on the ground and waited. After a moment, the horse shifted slightly and turned her head toward him. Her eyes were dull but still alive. There was fear in them, but also a quiet trust that surprised him. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small apple he had saved earlier. He placed it gently on the ground and pushed it toward her with care. The horse sniffed the air, then leaned forward as much as the chain allowed. She took a slow bite. Tom watched closely as she ate, one small bite at a time. He felt relief seeing her take food. While she ate, Tom studied the area. There were no fresh tracks nearby. No signs that anyone had checked on her recently. The wooden post looked old, like it had been there for years. This was not a place someone passed by often. Whoever left her here did not plan to return soon. When the apple was gone, Tom stood up slowly and took off his jacket. He wrapped it gently around the chain where it touched her skin. He did it carefully, making sure not to hurt her. The horse flinched at first, but then relaxed when she felt the pressure ease. Tom knew he could not free her right away. The chain was thick, and he had no tools with him. He needed to act wisely. He spoke softly again and promised he would come back soon. The horse lifted her head slightly, as if she understood. Before leaving, Tom poured water from his bottle into the empty bucket. The horse drank slowly, carefully, like she did not trust that it would last. Tom stayed until she finished. He did not want her to feel alone again too quickly. As he walked back toward his house, his mind raced. He felt anger toward the person who had done this, but more than that, he felt responsibility. This horse was now part of his concern. He could not sleep knowing she was out there. Back inside his home, Tom moved quickly. He grabbed tools, rope, food, and a larger water container. He also picked up a blanket. His hands moved with purpose. The quiet night no longer felt peaceful. It felt urgent. On his way back, the night seemed different. The stars looked sharper, and the wind felt colder. When he reached the horse again, she raised her head immediately. She recognized him now. That small sign filled Tom with hope. He spoke to her again and began working on the chain. It took time and patience. He worked carefully, stopping often to let her rest. At last, the chain loosened enough for her to move more freely. He did not remove it completely, but he made sure it no longer pulled at her neck. Tom placed the blanket gently over her back. She shivered at first, then relaxed as the warmth spread. He led her slowly away from the post, one careful step at a time. She followed him, trusting his lead despite her weakness. The walk back to the ranch was slow. Tom stayed close, guiding her gently. When they reached the barn, he helped her inside and gave her a clean place to rest. She lowered herself onto the soft ground and let out a long breath. Tom stayed with her for a long time. He watched her chest rise and fall. He made sure she was safe. Only then did he allow himself to feel tired. As the first light of morning touched the sky, Tom knew this was only the beginning. There were questions to answer. Why had she been left there? Who had done this? And most important of all, would she recover? The horse rested quietly in the barn, Safe for now. For the first time in many days, she slept without fear. Morning arrived slowly on the ranch. The sky changed from dark blue to soft gray, and the air carried a calm silence. Inside the barn, the horse lay on a bed of dry hay. Her breathing was slow and steady. Tom sat nearby on a wooden stool, watching her closely. He had not slept much. His mind stayed busy with questions and worry. When the horse finally opened her eyes, she looked around carefully. The barn was new to her. The walls were strong, and the smell of hay filled the air. She tried to lift her head and managed a small movement. Tom noticed right away. He stood up slowly so he would not scare her and spoke in a gentle voice. His tone was warm and patient. He brought her fresh water and more food. This time, she ate with a little more strength. Each bite seemed to give her back a small piece of herself. Tom felt a quiet relief watching her improve, even if only a little. He knew healing would take time. Later that morning, Tom called a local animal helper named Ray. Ray had helped with injured animals before and knew how to handle difficult cases. When Ray arrived, he studied the horse carefully. He checked her legs, her neck, and her breathing. His face grew serious, but there was hope in his eyes. Ray told Tom that the horse had been under stress for a long time. She had not been cared for properly, and the chain marks showed she had been tied for many days. But her heart was strong, and with care, she could recover. Tom felt a weight lift from his chest when he heard those words. As Ray worked, Tom cleaned the chain and the blanket. While doing so, he noticed something he had missed before. The chain had a small tag attached to it, worn and dirty. He picked it up and wiped it carefully. There was a faded mark on it, almost unreadable, but it looked like part of a ranch symbol. This detail stayed in Tom's mind. After Ray left, Tom decided to look into it. He had lived in the area for years and knew most ranch symbols. He remembered seeing a similar mark long ago on a nearby property that had closed down. That afternoon, Tom drove into town. He visited an old supply store where people often shared local news. He asked carefully, not accusing anyone, just looking for information. Some people shook their heads, but one older man remembered something. He spoke of a small ranch that had struggled financially and shut down months ago. The owner had left suddenly, leaving many things behind. Tom felt a chill. He thanked the man and left the store. The idea that the horse had been abandoned made his chest ache. She had likely been loyal and hard-working once, then forgotten when things became difficult. Back at the ranch, Tom sat beside the horse again. He gently brushed her coat. Dust and old hair fell away, revealing patches of healthier skin underneath. She seemed calmer now. Her eyes followed his movements, and she did not pull away when he touched her neck carefully. Tom spoke to her as he worked, telling her about the ranch and the quiet days and the open fields. He did not know if she understood his words, but he believed she understood his care. The horse shifted closer to him, a small but meaningful sign. As the sun lowered in the sky, Tom made a decision. He would not send her away or leave her fate to chance. He would give her a new life here, no matter how long it took. The thought filled him with purpose. That night, the ranch felt different. The silence was no longer empty. It felt peaceful. The horse slept standing up for a while, then rested again on the hay. Tom checked on her once more before going inside. Outside, the stars returned to the sky. The same land that had heard her cries now held her safely. Her past was still painful, but her future was beginning to change. In the quiet of the barn, the horse breathed deeply. Her body was weak, but her spirit was not broken. For the first time since being chained, she felt something close to trust. Tom closed the barn door gently and looked back one last time. He knew challenges were ahead, but he also knew he would not walk away. Days passed slowly on the ranch, and each day brought small changes. Tom followed a steady routine. He woke early, checked the horse, cleaned the barn, and prepared her food with care. He moved calmly around her, never rushing. He knew trust grew slowly, like a plant needing time and patience. The horse began to stand more firmly. At first, her legs still shook, but she no longer looked like she might fall at any moment. Tom noticed how her eyes followed him when he entered the barn. They were brighter now. Not fully strong, but no longer empty. That change alone gave him hope. Every morning, Tom led her a few steps outside the barn. He did not push her far. Just enough to let her feel fresh air and see open space again. The first time, she hesitated. Her body remembered the chain and the pain. She froze for a moment, breathing fast. Tom stopped immediately and spoke softly. He waited until her breathing slowed. Only then did they take another step. The ground outside was soft with grass. She lowered her head and sniffed it, unsure. Then she took a small bite. Tom smiled quietly. It was the first grass she had eaten freely in a long time. He stayed close, ready to support her if she lost balance. Ray visited again after a few days. He checked her progress and nodded with approval. He said her strength was returning slowly but surely. Her body needed rest more than anything. Tom listened carefully to every word. He wanted to do everything right. Later that day, Tom brushed her coat again. This time, it shone faintly under the sunlight. The dull gray look was fading. She leaned slightly into the brush, enjoying the feeling. That small action filled Tom's chest with warmth. It meant she trusted him enough to relax. At night, the ranch felt peaceful. The horse no longer cried. Instead, she stood quietly or rested on the hay. The silence was no longer heavy. It felt safe. Tom slept better knowing she was calm. One afternoon, a storm rolled in. Dark clouds covered the sky, and thunder echoed across the land. Tom worried it might scare her. He went to the barn and stayed there while the rain fell. The horse lifted her head when thunder sounded, but she did not panic. She stayed near Tom, her body close to his side. Tom spoke to her, steady and calm. He told her the storm would pass. His voice stayed strong. The horse listened. She stayed still, trusting him to keep her safe. When the storm finally ended, sunlight returned, and the barn felt warmer again. That moment changed something between them. From then on, the horse followed Tom more easily. She walked beside him without pulling away. Her steps grew stronger each day. The fear that once ruled her movements slowly faded. One evening, Tom opened the gate to a larger field. He did not lead her inside right away. He stood and waited. The horse looked at the open space. Wide grass stretched before her. The wind moved freely there. For a moment, she stayed still. Then she stepped forward. One step. Then another. Her walk was slow but steady. Tom stayed at the gate, watching. He did not want to rush her. She moved deeper into the field and stopped. She lifted her head and breathed deeply. For the first time, she stretched her legs fully. She did not run, but she moved with more freedom than before. Her tail moved slightly. Her ears stood tall. Tom felt tears rise in his eyes, but he kept still. She turned and looked back at him. There was no fear in her eyes now. Only calm awareness. That look told him everything he needed to know. She knew she was safe. As the sun set, the sky turned orange and gold. The horse stood quietly in the field, strong enough to enjoy the moment. Tom leaned against the fence, feeling proud and grateful. He thought about how close she had been to giving up. How one sound in the night had changed everything. The land that once carried her cries now carried peace. That night, as stars filled the sky, Tom closed the barn with a smile. The horse rested peacefully inside, her body stronger, her spirit healing. The hardest days were behind them now. A new chapter was beginning. The final days of recovery came quietly, without drama or noise. The horse no longer needed constant watching, but Tom still checked on her often. It had become a habit and also a comfort. Each morning, she stood waiting near the gate, calm and steady. Her body looked fuller now, and her coat reflected the sunlight with a healthy shine. Tom decided it was time to give her a name. He believed names mattered. They carried meaning and belonging. One morning, as she stood beside him, he softly called her Hope. The name felt right. The horse lifted her head and turned toward him. From that day on, she responded to the sound of it. Hope grew stronger with each passing week. She walked easily across the fields and no longer hesitated at open spaces. The memory of the chain had not vanished, but it no longer controlled her. She trusted the land again. She trusted Tom. People from nearby ranches began to notice her. Some stopped by and asked about the horse. Tom told her story simply, without anger. He spoke about listening to the land and paying attention to quiet suffering. Those who listened left thoughtful and quiet. One afternoon, Tom opened the largest pasture. This time, Hope stepped forward without pause. She walked into the open field and then broke into a gentle run. Not fast or wild, just free. Her movement was smooth and strong. Tom watched from the fence, his heart full. Hope slowed and turned back toward him. She walked over and stood beside the fence. Tom reached out and rested his hand on her neck. She stood still, calm and proud. There was no fear in her eyes. Only peace. Life on the ranch found a new rhythm. Hope became part of the daily work. She carried light loads and walked steady paths. She never overworked, and Tom always made sure she rested well. Their bond grew through quiet moments rather than big actions. At night, the ranch felt alive in a new way. The wind moved through the grass, and the stars shone brightly above. Hope rested in the barn or under the open sky, safe and content. The screams that once filled the night were gone, replaced by calm breathing and gentle movement. One evening, Tom sat outside and thought about how close everything had come to ending differently. If he had ignored the sound, if he had stayed inside, if the land had stayed silent. But none of that happened. He listened, and that made all the difference. Hope walked over and stood near him. Tom smiled and spoke her name. She lowered her head and rested near his side. They stayed like that for a long time, sharing the quiet. The land held their story now. A story of pain that turned into care. Of silence that became listening. Of a horse who cried through the night and a man who answered. As the stars faded and morning came again, Hope stood strong on the ranch. She was no longer chained. She was no longer alone. She had a place, a name, and a future. And the land remembered her not for her suffering, but for her strength.